What's up everyone? I'm Steve and this is the College Support Network. I have experiences working in high schools as a college advisor, and I also have experiences working in financial aid, admissions, and academic advising. I'm really passionate about college access, and I know applying to colleges can be really confusing as well as really frustrating. That's why I'm here to provide you all accurate and quality information so you can make the best informed decisions about college. This video is for high school seniors who are unsure about what they should be doing their senior year and how their senior year should look like as it relates to college applications, college admissions, as well as financial aid. There's a lot of great and valuable information in this video, so before we get started, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help the channel out. So before I get started with the actual timeline, I want to just briefly go over why having a senior timeline is important and why you should make a personalized one for yourself. The first reason and the most obvious reason for me is that a senior timeline will really allow you to be as efficient as possible in your senior year. There's a famous saying that goes, work smarter, not harder, right? So I think having a senior timeline actually allows you to do both at the same time. This is great because although you might have to work a little bit harder to create that timeline in the beginning of the year, it will allow you to work smarter as well. Because after you create this timeline, you'll be able to prioritize things based on importance as well as based on deadlines. Like I said, this allows you to be as efficient as possible because now you can prioritize things based on what you need to get done now as opposed to things that aren't due for another couple of months. Senior timelines are also really great because they allow you to visualize everything you need to get done. I don't know about you all, but I'm a very visual person, so being able to visualize and write down everything I need to get done and when I need to get them completed helps me not to become overwhelmed. Another great thing about senior timelines is that it allows you to check off things that you've gotten done, and there's just always something great about checking off things on a to-do list that you need to get done. At least for me, that feels great every time I get to check off something on my to-do list, so this may help you as well. And the last great thing about senior timelines, and this is kind of related to things I've already mentioned already, but senior timelines are great because it actually allows you to not really miss any deadlines that you may have. For instance, when I create a timeline, and for this instance, when you create a senior timeline, you'll be able to calendar every single thing. So if you're applying to a UC, CSU, private schools, and financial aid, which all has different deadlines, you'll be able to use your senior timeline to pretty much calendar everything via Google Calendars, Outlook Calendar, basically any calendar app or website that you use, and figure out when the deadlines are so you don't miss them. So like I said, work smarter, not harder, and when you can, definitely do both. Next, I'll be going into the actual timeline students should kind of have when they're applying for colleges and financial aid. So the first month is August. I know this video might be coming out at the tail end of August or maybe early September, depending on when I have time to edit this video, so sorry if it comes out a little bit late. But the great thing about August is that a lot of the things that you do in August, you can actually do in September as well. So I'll be going over both months and talking about when you should be starting some things in August and when you should be continuing or starting some things in September. So the first thing I advise students to do in August is definitely create a professional or college related email. You might be asking what's a professional or what's a college related email. For me at least, I think it should be a very simple name based on your actual name and not something weird and crazy like I've seen some students apply to college with like Omega Dragon XYZ at hotmail.com, something like that. I would really advise against that. You want to make sure it's your name, it's easily readable, and it's easy to remember. Because a lot of the times you'll be using this email all throughout college and even after college when you start applying for jobs and things like that. Some tips is try to make it as simple as possible. Like I said, try to make it your name. I know a lot of students have very common names, so try to add some dots in there, some underscores. I don't think you could do dashes, but anything you could do to make it as simple as possible. Also, I don't have any bias or prejudices against any specific email company, but I know a lot of people use Gmail, so I would probably advise most students go that route if possible. Yahoo's okay, Hotmail is okay. I don't know if AOL.com is a thing anymore, but you could use that as well. But like I said, Gmail is probably a safe bet. So the second thing I tell students to do in August is create a college list of the different schools that they are interested in applying to. This doesn't mean that you're going to apply to all these schools, and it doesn't mean that you won't be able to add any schools in the future, but usually having a good base of schools that you know pretty certain that you're going to apply to does help a lot. When creating college lists, I usually tell students to divide it into 3 different categories. The categories can be divided into most competitive, competitive, and least competitive. In the past, students have divided these into categories such as their reach school, target school, and then safety school. I really want to get away from this terminology and verbiage just because these days college is just extremely hard to get into at all levels. So there isn't really such thing as a safety school anymore. I know a lot of students that had 4 or 5 safety schools last year and the year before, and they didn't get into any of them. So I want to start using this terminology instead, just because every school is going to be somewhat competitive regardless of where you apply. So dividing them into most competitive, competitive, and then least competitive or less competitive does help a lot. But at the end of the day, this is just terminology and verbiage that I use. You can make it any names or any verbiage that you would like. I won't go into too much depth about how to complete a college list today because I will be doing a more in-depth video in the future. So if you would like to see that, make sure to subscribe. The next thing I tell students to do in August is start to understand the application requirements for each of the campuses and colleges that they're applying for. So having a college list first definitely is going to help with this. So like I mentioned already, the UCs, CSUs, private schools, and community colleges, and even financial aid applications for each of these schools are a little bit different from one another. So that's why this college list is really important, and the senior timeline is really important because it allows you to start writing down the different requirements for each of these schools. And the last thing I tell students to do in August is just to start compiling a list of different things and gathering information for application season. This includes things such as extracurriculars, which would involve things such as any jobs, internships, volunteer work, hobbies, or anything like that that you were involved in. For this, make sure to talk about when you were involved with them or when you did them, how long you were involved for, how many hours, what exactly you did, and things like that. You also want to gather information about any awards and honors that you received. For this, you'll want to talk about what the honor or award was, when you were given it, and what exactly you did to get it. Lastly, you also want to gather any information regarding any essays that you might have to write for the schools that you're applying to. For instance, the UCs are going to require 4 out of 8 PIQs or personal insight questions. Any private schools you apply to will require some sort of essay that you're going to have to submit. As we mentioned in our CSU video, everything you need to know about the California State University system. They don't require an essay, however, for students that are interested in the Educational Opportunity Program or EOP, you will have to submit some short answer questions. I know August is a little far out for writing essays or starting to write essays for applications that aren't due until November or December for some schools, but I think it's a good opportunity to just start looking and seeing what questions you might want to answer and then start gathering information from there. However, for students that are interested in writing essays earlier on in August or maybe even July, that's totally fine too. If you have time to do that, definitely go ahead and do that. For me, I always thought the earlier I start an essay, the more times I have to edit it, and hopefully the more edits I have, the better the essay could be. So if you aren't a strong essay writer or you just really want to get into a great school or you know you need a good essay, start as early as you can. Okay, so now let's talk about September. Do you remember the college list I told you to make in August? Well, in September, you're going to want to start narrowing down that list just because if you added some schools that you don't want to apply to now, there's really no point in looking at the requirements or even looking into that school anymore. Start narrowing down that list now so you can be as efficient as you can be with the time that you have. When you're narrowing down your college list, something that you really want to think about is match and fit. I know we hear match and fit all the time, and there's really never any time someone tries to explain it to us, so I'll try to do that here. For me, match and fit means that a school has to be able to empower me to do my best academically as well as professionally. Additionally, it should provide an environment where I could grow as an individual with peers and colleagues. Lastly, it should be a place where I could see myself in the next 4 or 5 years. For instance, I've been in Southern California my entire life, and there are a lot of schools on the East Coast that would fit my needs as a student and would help me get the degree that I needed to get the job that I wanted to after I graduate. However, I'm not used to the code, and I don't think I'll ever be used to the code. So if it's coding the East Coast all the time during the winter and I'm not used to it, it's going to be hard for me to focus. This sounds like a goofy or weird reason not to go to a school, but it's something that students should look at. And there are a lot of different other things that students should look at as well when they're applying to schools. If you can't imagine yourself at a campus or a college for 4 or 5 years, then most likely it shouldn't be a campus that you're looking at. Another thing students should be looking at when they're narrowing down the list is cost. If I know I'm a need-based student and a college I really want to is known for not offering need-based financial aid, then it might not be a good option for me to attend just because I don't want to take out a lot of loans and I don't want to pay a lot of money out of pocket. This is just one of the millions of other factors that students should be looking at when they're making the college list. The next thing students should be focusing on in September is actually starting the college applications for the schools that they're looking into. For the most part, students should be able to fill out their personal information and some of their academic profile right away. For the academic profile portion, I really advise students to have a copy of their unofficial transcripts with them so then they can fill out their grades and courses correctly. At the same time, students should be starting at least on their first or second draft of the essays for the schools that they're applying to. Like I said, it doesn't have to be great already, and it doesn't even have to be a full essay. You could even just make the outline now and then write the essay later, but you should really start thinking about doing some of the concrete work now, which is just writing things down. So when later September comes or October or November, when applications are actually due, you have some things down already. One quick tip about writing college essays is that a lot of these campuses will require students to write very similar essays. So what I tell students is write one general essay that they could use for multiple campuses. Obviously, you would have to tailor it a little bit for each campus that you're applying to, but this allows you to work smarter and harder at the same time, so you're not writing the same essay over and over and over again. The next thing I tell students to do might not be viable for this upcoming year at least, but during this time, I tell a lot of students to start visiting the campuses that they want to attend. This may be hard because we are still in pandemic times, so I'm not sure if students are going to be able to visit campuses, but if that's an option for you, I would definitely look into it. And this goes back to match and fit. For me, when I was applying to colleges, I went to each of the campuses that I was applying to because if I couldn't see myself on that campus, I couldn't see myself walking through the halls or walking to lunch or walking or just doing anything, honestly, on the college campus, then I just wouldn't apply. I know that sounds a little bit weird too, but there's just that feel that you get when you're on a college campus. And if you feel like you can't or don't belong there, then I would suggest not applying. But obviously you want to take other things into account as well. Lastly, in September, for schools that are requiring a letter of recommendation, I would start thinking about the teachers, counselors, coaches, maybe even priests or just anyone that would be able to write you a letter of recommendation. A quick tip with letters of recommendation is try to get someone that you know for sure is going to write something good about you. When I was helping students with college access at the high school level, I had a couple students tell me that their recommenders wrote bad things about them. So definitely make sure you know your recommender well and make sure you ask someone that will write good things. Another quick tip about letters of recommendation is definitely make sure to ask your recommender to write you a letter as soon as possible before the deadline. So I've been telling students all the time, if the deadline's in October, you should have asked them in August. If the deadline's in November, you should have asked them in September. A lot of the times your recommenders are doing a bunch of different things, so they might not have the time to write your letter right away. So you only give them a week or 2 weeks notice, they might not be able to get it in time. So definitely I tell students that 1 or 2 month notice definitely helps a lot. So now we're in October, and the college list that you made all the way in August and narrowed down in September should be finalized now. So you shouldn't really be adding any more schools at this point. If you haven't done so already, I would advise students to start making their professional emails now to start applying to colleges just because a lot of the deadlines are in October and November. Another quick tip about creating your professional or college email is that you don't want to use one that was generated from your high school. So if I went to XYZ high school, I probably have my name at XYZ high school, right? And like I mentioned already, you're going to be using this email usually beyond college. So a lot of times when you graduate from high school, your high school email gets deleted or you won't be able to get access to it anymore. So like I said, I really suggest you to create a separate one. Similar to September, you want to continue with the college applications for the schools that you're applying to. This would include things such as double checking your personal and academic profile to make sure that everything you wrote down is correct, continuing to work and edit your essays, correctly and effectively filling out your extracurricular activities, awards, and honors. And I say effectively because when you fill out information for your extracurriculars, your awards, and honors, you want to write them in a way that makes your application stand out, but still make sure that it's accurate. For instance, if I won an award or was given a special honor or distinction, I'm not going to just say I got XYZ. I'm going to say I got XYZ, which is ABC, and I did EFG to get ABC or XYZ or wherever. I'm kind of confused now, but you just want to make sure that you provide as much information as possible to make sure that your application stands out. So then the person reading your application knows exactly what the extracurricular was or knows exactly what that award or honor was. Lastly, for the college application portion, you want to make sure you start gathering test scores and any financial information that may be asked of you. Also for October, students that are applying to private schools should start looking at things such as early action or early decision. I'll have a video in the future regarding what these differences are, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And the very last thing for October, and students should already have this honestly in September, but if you haven't done so already, make a calendar of all the things that you need to submit and all the deadlines for them. Okay, so now we're in November, and now things are starting to get a little bit crazy and things are picking up a lot more. In November, a lot of students will begin submitting their applications, specifically for students that are applying to CSUs and UCs. The application does allow you to start submitting November 1st. Obviously, students that are applying to private schools are going to have different deadlines. For students in both populations, so if you're applying to the UCs or CSUs or you're applying to private schools, I really advise you to have multiple people look at your application to make sure that you're filling everything out correctly. Additionally, people that are looking over your application, make sure to ask them to read your essay as well, and make sure that any information that you may have for your extracurriculars, awards, and honors are all written down correctly and effectively. Similarly, during this month, you should already know if any of the campuses or majors that you're applying for has any supplemental requirements as well. So for the month of November, you want to make sure that you're filling this out and completing it along with the general application for the schools that you're applying to. Lastly, for the month of November, you really want to start applying for financial aid or at least start looking at the applications. For FAFSA, GMAC, and CSS Profile, they all opened up actually earlier than November, but usually want students to start focusing on financial aid applications after the college application season. So after you submit your UCs, CSU, private school apps, you want to start looking at financial aid a little bit after. You're more than welcome to do both at the same time, but at least in my experience, students have gotten stressed when trying to do both. So if you are in that group of students that may get stressed, definitely make sure to look at financial aid a little bit after. There's this misconception that the later you sign up for financial aid, the less you're going to get. Typically, this isn't true as long as you submit before the deadline. So for FAFSA and GMAC, that's March 2nd. So as long as you submit before then, you're good to go. Okay, so now it's December, right? All your college apps are due. You might be done with financial aid applications. There's nothing else for you to do. It's senior year. We're gonna party. We're just gonna have fun. We're not gonna think about anything else, right? Wrong. Some private schools actually still have the application open in December, so I would suggest students look into that if one of the schools that they may be interested in still has the application open. The next thing I really tell students to look at in December is start looking at community college applications. I know a lot of students know for sure that they're going to a 4-year. They know I'm never going to go to a community college, or I'm never going to go to XYZ school because I'm going to get into Harvard, I'm going to get into USC, I'm going to get into UCLA, so why even think about community college? I think it's a good idea just to have a backup plan in case for whatever reason you don't get into the schools that you wanted to. Or maybe you were accepted into the schools that you want to get into, but they aren't offering you financial aid. Applying to community colleges allows you to have that backup plan just in case of anything. In the past, I had a lot of students accepted into 4-year universities that were their first choice, and they didn't apply to community colleges. And then comes May, when they get their financial aid packages, they realize that they have to pay $30,000 out of pocket every single year. And then they decide, hey, maybe I'm not gonna go to XYZ school. However, by now it might be a little bit late to apply to the community colleges. That's why I suggest students to do it as soon as possible, just to have the backup plan. If you end up not going to a community college, that's fine. At least you still have the application open just in case. As we mentioned in the California Community College video, there's a lot of differences between the community colleges, and a lot of the times they will have different deadlines for their applications. So it's really important for students to do their own research to figure out when the deadline is for their local community college. Also in December, for students that haven't completed their financial aid applications yet, such as the FAFSA, DREAM Act, or CSS profile for our private school students, this is a good time to start so you don't get lazy over winter break. Lastly, in December, students should really start compiling a list of outside, private, or even local scholarships that they may be eligible to apply for. I'll be making a video in the future regarding how to create a scholarships list, where to apply, and how to apply, so make sure to subscribe. Okay, so now it's January. New year, new you, right? You're motivated to go to school now. You're invested in your future. You want to go to college. You want to get things done. You want to get a good job.
Okay.
What should you be doing in January? Relax. I'll tell you right now. The first thing, if you haven't done so already, is create a portal or an account for all the colleges that you apply to. This is really important because a lot of the schools that you apply to will ask you to submit further information to verify the information that you put on your application was true. A lot of the times they'll ask for SAT or ACT verification or AP test verification and so on. So make sure to create these accounts and make sure to check up on them every couple of days to make sure that you aren't missing any deadlines. Also in January, you want to just make sure that you submit any financial aid applications that you haven't submitted already. To go off of this, a lot of times when students submit the applications early in November or December or even October, they'll get an email later on from FAFSA or the CSS profile or GMAC letting them know that they need to submit more information for verification. So this is a good time to keep up with your emails to make sure that you have everything that you need to get the financial aid that you need. Lastly, like I mentioned in December, continue to make that list of scholarships that you're applying to, and now you should really start writing your essays or doing whatever you need to get the scholarships. I know some scholarships require students to submit a portfolio, some will ask for a video, I think that's a Taco Bell scholarship, and others will require a bunch of different things. So make sure to create that list, create a list of different things that you need to do for each scholarship, and get started on that. So February is going to look a lot like what you were doing in January as it relates to college admissions and financial aid. Like I said already, continue to create those profiles or accounts or portals for the schools that you apply to, and make sure to keep checking up on them every couple of days to see if any other information is required of you. Again, continue with financial aid applications if you haven't completed them already. Like I said, FAFSA and California DREAM Act is due in March, so February is a good last month to get all your information and submit the application before the deadline. Again, for February, make sure to continue to fill out the application requirements for the different scholarships that you're interested in and that you're eligible for. This is also a good time to start contacting the local college and career center at your high school or maybe in your community and ask if there's any scholarships that may be eligible for you. A quick tip about this is that local scholarships are usually good for students because they're only open for students in that community. And scholarships is just a game of numbers, so the more students that are applied to a scholarship, the less likely you'll be able to get it. However, for local scholarships or scholarships that are just for your community, you're only competing against other students in your communities, so chances are a lot less students are applying. This means you have a higher chance of getting that scholarship. And the last thing for February is students really need to continue and maintain their grades in high school. I know senioritis is kicking in full gear at this time of the year. It's after January and you're in your last couple of months before you're done with high school, and I know it's a really crazy but cool time for a lot of students. But at the same time, you want to make sure that your grades are still up to par with the standards of the schools that you're applying to. This is important because even if you're accepted into a school, there are actually a lot of campuses that will rescind your admission or acceptance because you failed a class in your senior year. In the past, I've actually had a lot of students accepted into very prestigious universities across the United States, and a lot of them actually had their application or admission rescinded because they received a D in their final math class, or even a class that isn't A to G related or isn't even a core class. I actually had a student have their admission rescinded to a prestigious university because they got a D in PE their senior year. We were able to work things out with the university to get them into the school still, but like I said, these schools have the full authority to deny you admission even after acceptance if you fail a class in your year. So make sure to keep up to date and maintain your grades. Okay, so now it's March. Financial aid applications such as the FAFSA and DREAM Act are due now, so make sure to get that in if you haven't done so already. And like I've already said, you'll want to continue to make sure to stay up to date with any of the portals, or accounts, or websites to any of the schools that you apply to. At this time, most of the schools will be sending you some information or some verification that they'll need from you, so this is a really great time to start checking every single day as opposed to just a couple of days. Some other items that you want to look at in March is similar to February, where you want to make sure that you're still maintaining your grades in the classes for your senior year. So like I said, no D's and F's. And also during this time, you also want to continue to apply to any scholarships that you may be eligible for. The difference between March and February is that a lot of students now might be getting some acceptances from the schools that they applied to. Particularly, a lot of private schools will start submitting or sending out acceptances to students that got in via early decision or early action, or just other students that were able to get in early. In the past, I've seen some students get into UC campuses as early as March. However, this is usually not as common. The important thing to remember here is that you want to start making a list of the different campuses that you were accepted into. This could be as little as 2 campuses or even as high as 15 schools. But the important thing, like I said, is to make that list, because once you're done with getting all your acceptances, you'll be able to visualize the schools that you were accepted into. Then you can start figuring out what school you want to attend in the fall semester. For the month of April, you should be hearing back about final decisions about whether you were accepted or denied to the colleges that you applied to. This is a good time to start that list if you haven't already in the last month of the different schools that you were accepted into and the different schools that you were denied from. From the acceptance list that you should have created, this is a good time to start making a pros and cons list or worksheet of different reasons why you should or shouldn't go to the school that you were accepted into. This is a good opportunity for you to figure out whether the school is a good match and a good fit for you if you haven't done so already, and then figure out what school you eventually want to end up at. If you're interested in a video of how to determine what school you should go to based on the list of schools you were accepted into, definitely leave that in the comments below. If a lot of students show interest or want a video like that in the future, I'll be sure to make one. Towards the tail end of April, you should really have a good idea of where you want to attend in the fall semester, just because most campuses will require a statement of intent to register or just a statement saying that you are going to attend their school. The last thing to worry about in April is the housing application. For some campuses, the housing application may open sometime in March, and some might not even open until May. However, this is a good time for you to keep up to date on whether the housing application is opened or not for the campus that you're going to. If it is already open in April, this is a good time to start filling it out if you really do want to dorm or live on campus your first year. I don't want to push students in any specific direction. There's definitely pros and cons of living on campus or living off campus or even just living at home and commuting. It's entirely up to the student. However, from my own experience, I really loved living on campus. I loved my entire freshman experience, and I feel like a lot of it was due to me living on campus my freshman year. Like I mentioned though, every student's situation is going to be a little bit different. So I really suggest students to look into this further if it's something that they really want to pursue. Hey everyone, so this is Steve from the future. While I was editing this current video that you're watching, I totally forgot to mention some important things about financial aid that you should be thinking about in the months of April and May. So for the months of April and May, you should already be getting the financial aid packages for the schools that you were accepted into. When looking at your financial aid packages, you should see a lot of different components such as grants, scholarships, loans if you have them, and work study. During these 2 months, you definitely want to take a look at your financial aid packages, and if you don't understand what these terms are, if you don't know what the different grants or scholarships or loans are, this is a really good opportunity to talk to your financial aid advisor at the school that you're going to, or even talk to your guidance counselor or college counselor if you have one at your campus. Financial aid is really confusing, and honestly it changes every single year. So it's really important for you to talk to people that are really familiar with it, because college is a really big investment, and it's really important for you to know all the different components that are involved with your financial aid packages. I know money is a huge issue for a lot of students that are going to school, and obviously you would only go to schools that you know you could afford, right? So that's why understanding your financial aid package is extremely important. I know it's really confusing, so I'll be creating a lot more in-depth videos about financial aid packages, how to read them, and the different components that come in a financial aid package in the future. Okay, now back to the video. Okay, so now it's May, and by this time, most students should have already submitted their statement of intent to register for the course that they are going to be attending. The important thing here is to make sure that you pay any associated fees that are related to your statement of intent to register or certifying to your campus. Another item to address is just housing applications again. If the housing application is still open for you or available for you to submit, make sure to go ahead and do that if you're interested in living on campus. Another thing to think about in May is just maintaining your final grades. I know this is something that I didn't mention the last 2 months or so, but it should be something that's in the back of your mind the entire time. Like I said already, students can get their admissions rescinded or acceptance denied if they fail a class in their final year. And the final 2 things to worry about in May is submitting any official or final transcripts to the school that you're applying to, as well as submitting any official test scores such as the SAT, ACT, or AP exams. And the last thing I want to talk about in this video is summer melt. Summer melt may not be applicable to you right now based on when you're watching this video, and some students might not even be familiar with what summer melt means. But essentially, it's a phenomenon when students apply to a university or college and then they're accepted and then they say they're going to enroll, but for whatever reason over the summer, they end up not enrolling or they do something else entirely. I'll be making a dedicated video about summer melt in the future because honestly, I could go on for days and days about what summer melt is and how it occurs and why it even occurs, but I'll save you from that for now. Now that you know a little bit more about what a senior timeline is and why it's important and what it should even look like, I have a couple questions for you. How many colleges do you plan on applying to, and have you started your college list yet? The next question is, based on this video, do you plan on creating your own personalized senior year timeline? If yes, definitely let me know in the comments below. Before I let you go, I just want you to know that this senior year timeline is going to look different for every single student. Not every single student is going to do things in the exact order or should even do things in the exact order that I listed. However, it should work as a guideline just because every student's situation is going to be different. You're going to be applying to different schools, different financial aid applications. Each school is going to have their own deadlines and things like that. So the senior year timeline that I mentioned today should just work as a guideline for you. It should work as a template. And then from there, you could personalize it based on your own needs. With all that being said, thumbs if you learned and subs if you loved. Peace out, y'all.